Hello and welcome to the Salty John Show. The name is because, as Catholic Christians, we are called to be the salt of the earth. The show is going to be about discussing truth, no matter where that leads. Sometimes that will be politics, sometimes culture, sometimes general news, law. Things discussed will generally be related to the Catholic Church and how we can apply true Catholic principles to our daily lives. Let us go ahead and begin with today's topic, which is the Trump commentary on calling MS-13 gang members animals. I know that this was out of the news a little bit ago, but I wrote this episode down a couple weeks back. And then, surprisingly enough, it ended up back in the news when a CNN analyst compared Trump's campaign and Trump's White House to the MS-13 gang. Now, for those who still may be unaware, this question was from a lady named Margaret Mims, Fresno County, California sheriff, and she was asking the president. Okay, and I'm not going to read the entirety of it. Basically, Miss Mims is talking about this Truth Act and Trust Act and SB 54 and the Values Act in California. Basically, it bars ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, from accessing databases for criminals in California who have been apprehended, and there's ongoing litigation in the federal courts. And then the immediate context here is Sheriff Mims says, "Thank you. There could be an MS-13 member I know about. If they don't reach a certain threshold, I cannot tell ICE about it." Then the president said, "We have people coming into the country or trying to come in, and we're stopping a lot of them, but we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people, these are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before. And because of the weak laws, they come in fast. We get them, we release them, we get them again, we bring them out. It's crazy. The dumbest laws. As I said before, the dumbest laws on immigration in the world. So we're going to take care of it, Margaret. We'll get it done. We're going to ask that man right there because that man can do it." Referring to a gentleman from ICE. Right now, he's the most important man in the room. Kevin, can you do it? And that is the full context. So very clearly, this sheriff is asking about repeat criminals and in the direct context of MS-13 gang members. And I made the mistake of logging onto social media. And the first, I want to say, 8 to 12 stories that popped up on my newsfeed were people directly taking this out of context to stir up anti-Trump hatred. And I can fully understand if people don't like the president. I think he's doing overall a pretty great job. I can understand, though, that he rubs some people the wrong way, but deliberately taking something out of context to further your agenda is by definition a lie. These people were saying President Trump is calling illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants animals, when he was not doing that. He was referring in context directly to the MS-13 gang members. And now you had some people try and defend MS-13. Dennis Prager did a good job pointing this out in an article of his recently about the left and not wanting to define evil because they need evil to be a malleable term that they can sling at anyone who fights their control agenda. It's a really interesting piece. Dennis Prager, author of that one. And I think he starts to hit on what is correct about this. I don't think he brings it all the way home, and that's what I'm going to try to do for you today. So, MS-13, for those who do not know, MS-13, there was an entire documentary made all the way back in 2005 when they had already been considered the most dangerous gang in the nation by the FBI. And for those who may not recall, that was during George W. Bush's presidency, and they remained considered the most dangerous gang in the country all throughout Barack Obama's 8 years of presidency, and still are considered the most dangerous gang in the nation under the presidency of Donald Trump. So you can't just say only under Trump's FBI are they considered the most dangerous gang. When they say that they're the most dangerous gang, they mean it, and I have some stories here that are going to back that up for you and paint a little picture. And so here I'm going to throw in a bit of a parental notification. If you are listening to this podcast and you have small children around, you might want to listen to this in headphones or listen to it on your own prior to letting any children listen, just because the descriptions of some of these acts by MS-13 gang members can be a bit graphic. It's only going to take a couple minutes, but just wanted you to be aware. So let us go ahead and look into the what and then the why. Now, what we have here, and this is just from 2017, and it's not even taking into account the full year. First one we have is a filmed murder taking place where a 17-year-old gang member of MS-13 killed a 15-year-old girl because she suspected the victim dated her boyfriend. Another gang members filmed the torture and stabbing, leading to the arrest. This is courtesy of Cron.com. It is a crime website based out of Houston, Texas. Two gang members in connection to a gang-related shooting that occurred in March shot a 37-year-old in the back of the head while walking the street and left him there to die. April. Houston shooting. 11-year-old girl and two teenage boys were sent to the hospital after being injured in a gang-related shooting. Both teenage boys were documented members of MS-13. The 11-year-old girl was shot in the arm, no affiliation with the gang. Long Island killings. Police have linked MS-13 gang to a string of 11 murders in Long Island, New York. Four of the victims, ranging between ages 16 and 20, were murdered the same night after being attacked and mutilated by men wielding machetes. Again, more of these ritualistic style killings with brutal instruments. Not what you hear of every day when you hear of gang members just shooting each other. Now, next up we have September, more Long Island killings and attempted murder. Long Island police said 3 MS-13 gang members were arrested for the attempted murder of a 19-year-old who was slashed in the stomach with a machete and shot. All 3 perpetrators MS-13 gang members. Here we go. Queens shooting. New York police said they charged 3 MS-13 gang members with assault and attempted murder of a rival gang member. According to police, the victim was viciously beaten and shot in the head. He's now paraplegic due to the shooting. Yeah, so it keeps going. We get more and more and more of these brutal style murders. See here, armed robbery and rape an employee at a beauty salon. MS-13 gang members once created fear and drew attention with wild, dark tattoos and covered nearly their entire faces. Very fond of the use of the machete. And you get the picture on some of this. They do have what is common in gangs, commonly known as a jump-in procedure, where gang members will beat prospective new gang members for a predetermined period of time. Theirs are 13 seconds long and considered the most vicious, often leading to the deaths of would-be new gang members. These people drug trade, and especially for contract killings, according to the FBI. And now there are multiple whys to get into with these sorts of animalistic practices, to use the president's term. And I actually was glad to then see him double down on it about a week later, referring them to them again as animals, not giving in to the bullying tactics of the media desperate to defend violent gang members. So the first why would be the why they are, or at least could be referred to as animals. The second why would be why the left sets out to defend them. The third why would be why they are doing their horrific acts of violence in the first place. So to start with the first one, why they could be referred to as animals. There's very universal practices and sets of moral guidelines that we as humans tend to agree to live by, and these gang members who are out there, just stabbing, beheading, cutting organs out of people, are well outside the bounds of human society. They're also, I mean, animals is a way to get the point across with just one word. May not be the best choice of words not because it's too harsh, but because it's too lenient. These people have given up all sorts of human dignity by engaging in the behaviors that they are. The real issue, I would think, well, with calling them animals is that it's a bit underwhelming because animals don't go around beating each other to death for fun. They don't go around tattooing their faces and committing ritualistic killing. I mean, basically, animals follow their nature, and what these people are doing is completely contrary to human nature. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have the ability to repent and regain their human nature, but right now they are acting directly contrary to it. And so, with that, we will go ahead and move into why the left has to jump to the defense and try and obfuscate when there is no good reason to, because in this same report it says that Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General of the United States, has moved to have MS-13 labeled a terrorist organization, and that surveys show large support among the public for that reclassification, which would enable harsher measures to be taken to prevent them from, re-entering the country. Basically, you would have enemy combatant rules apply, and so police wouldn't be hamstrung by certain procedures, especially ones imposed by the court. And there's really no reason that a right-thinking person, not right politically, but right correct thinking person, would be trying to defend anything about these gang members until and unless they repent and seek forgiveness. They have no claim on sympathy, and I don't think that there are words too harsh to be applied to them. So why does the left and the media jump to the defense of heinous people and organizations just because the president or right-wing people call them out, essentially? Now, as I said before, I believe that the Prager piece is a good place to start because it gets us almost all the way there. My quote is going to start here. As noted above, everyone hates someone, and that includes people on the left. The problem is that they don't hate evil. They hate those who oppose evil. That is how liberals went from anti-communist to anti-anti-communist. To paraphrase one of the greatest moral insights of the Talmud, those who show mercy to the cruel will be cruel to the merciful. So, George W. Bush, not the Islamic terror world, is the left's villain. Life-embracing Israel is the left's villain, not their death-loving enemies. And religious Christians who note moral weakness within the Islamic world are the real danger, not the weaknesses within the Islamic world. He goes on. To be fair, it should be noted that confusion over evil and insufficiently hating it are not confined to the left. There are religious people who conflate sexual sin with evil and or advocate automatic forgiveness of all evildoers, even when no repentance has taken place. End quote. The end there is where we'll see some issues and where his position here, in my opinion, breaks down because he's not taking it further back to the root of evil, which is the lie, and that's where we get the sexual sin and the automatic forgiveness and evil easy believism of others. But he is fundamentally correct. What we do see on the left is a complete inability and unwillingness to fight against evil. They constantly fight against people who do fight against evil, and that's why no matter what Trump does, they find some excuse to pick it apart. Trump could come out tomorrow and embrace single payer health care and free college and everything. And because he's not a Bernie Sanders socialist, they will cry foul. Nothing will be good enough for them because they are the problem. That's not to say that no one on the right is a problem. There are lots of things that the right side does as well that can and do lead to some pretty nasty consequences. But the left has at its foundation a commitment to lie after lie after lie. They come to the defense of people like MS-13 because they are on the same side. And that side is, if you want to call it Satanism, if you want to call it atheism, if you want to call it secularism, it's all the same thing. It's the worship of people and evil things. And one would do well to remember that this is where it's going to become clear once we dive into this next section why these two groups are not exactly the same, because they do a better job. The media and them who defend people like MS-13, they just do a better job of hiding their evil, and they confine their more barbaric acts to private parties. I mean, things that we hear about via leaked emails, like during that last election cycle. The thing about MS-13 is they're not as sophisticated as the media, so their vile acts spill out onto the streets. But left unconstrained, the violent acts and the depraved acts of the liberal elite would and have in the past spilled out onto the streets. That's where you see things like Woodstock and the sexual revolution, where you had people having basically orgies in public, and now we have Las Vegas issuing, advertisements that they're about to host the quote world's biggest orgy in one of their hotels, and you see this thing creeping more and more and more into the open, but the left has to be the vanguard and try to play the moral equivalency game, so that when we hear these things that oh well, not all MS-13. Somebody I forget what show it was on. Forgive me, but I saw just the other day on either on a podcast or on the news. It might have been on the Michael No show, but there were people out there who were literally saying, "Oh, not every MS-13 gang member is animals," and they said something about people who handle their money and not the ones out there killing everybody. It's like, no, that's like saying that just because you only hand the abortionist his tools while he rips a baby to shreds in front of you, it doesn't make you evil. It does. You're complicit in heinous activities, and the media is complicit by extension for covering up and distracting, making sure that our states and cities are safe havens for these evil activities. And that's what the meeting with the California sheriffs and law enforcement officials was all about. The fact that California is nullifying federal law, which was, I thought we handled the nullification crisis like 100 years ago, I think it was. California is nullifying federal law, which violates the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution. We're supposed to be on board with that while they protect and harbor criminals just because there are good people who have come to the United States illegally. I'm not even really on the side of the vast majority, from what I'm aware of the right on this issue. I would vastly prefer a bunch of Mexican Catholics and South American and Central American Catholics to come into this country. But yeah, I mean, you have California, asking the president's help and ICE's help, and then the left wants to conflate that, cause everyone to turn against law and order, and keeping literally children, because there's so many of these people being killed by the MS-13 people are teenagers. And so literally protecting children by getting these people off of the streets and out of the country and back where they can be put into their own prison system or rehabilitated or whatever needs to happen. It just doesn't need to be at our taxpayers' expense. And the left is A-okay with that. What they want you to think is move along, but don't forget the president called people animals, and isn't that horrible? And you get the inevitable Nazi comparisons where they say, oh, the Nazis called the Jews animals. There's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between calling somebody an animal because of animalistic and beastly behavior that they themselves are freely engaging in, calling somebody an animal because they were born of a certain heritage. That there was a huge problem with people calling blacks animals or subhuman during the slavery days. I mean, I know that the church has been against that since the 1400s. Well, the church has always been against it, but the church has declared that sort of activity officially be excommunicable as early as I think it was 1453. The dehumanizing rhetoric is bad when it is applied to characteristics like race, like height, like disfigurement. Like you're born without a finger and somebody says, oh, you're a beast, we're going to throw you out, like the Spartans. But there's no danger in it when you're talking about the actions of people that are freely chosen and part of a morally reprobate system. And what we're going to get into now is the why behind all the other whys, and what we see is a huge prevalence of Satanism and Santa Muerte. Now everybody knows what Satanism is. Not many people are familiar with Santa Muerte because it's got that Catholic-ish veneer about it because it's saint, and it's not saint. Santa Muerte means saint death, which Catholics will know there is no saint death. Death is a consequence of sin. And what you see in Santa Muerte is in Central America. It's got millions of followers. And Saint Death predominantly depicted as a skeleton, a female skeleton with long hair, wearing a dress, but holding the scythe of death, and venerated. So what they do is, there's latria and there's dulia and hyperdulia. The dulia is veneration of the saints and the angels. The hyperdulia is veneration of Mary. And latria is worship, which is due only to God. And the Santa Muerte confuse the hyperdulia and the latria, so they give their saint death latria that is due only to God, and trick themselves essentially into thinking that they are giving latria to God, but only dulia or hyperdulia to Santa Muerte. And this will become evident once I read off a couple of sections of their Santa Muerte rosary. Our Lady, the Blessed Virgin Mary. And what we see when we get these perversions is the clear inversion of the proper orders. I'm going to go ahead and bring up some of these characteristics and get you a bit of sourcing and reading material. It is considered and has been reported as one of the fastest growing religious movements. That was by Andrew Chestnut, professor of religious studies at Virginia Commonwealth University. In 2015, it were estimated that 10 to 12 million devotees in just the U.S., Mexico, and Central America. This was reported by the Daily Beast. Moving over to the FBI.gov website, Quote, the cult appears to have more European than Aztecan origins, with some individuals describing Santa Muerte as a New Age Grim Reaper type goddess, a bad girl counterpart to the Virgin of Guadalupe. Her imagery includes that of a robed skeleton carrying a scythe and a globe or scales. Part of her popularity results from her characterization as non-judgmental, amoral, and a source of supernatural intervention for her followers who engage in the correct rituals and provide the proper offerings and sacrifices. Over half of the prayers directed at her include petitions to harm other people via curses and death magic. The FBI goes on. A sizable minority of worshippers follow the fully criminalized variant of Santa Muerte worship, steeped in narcocultura. The harsher version has gained popularity in Mexico as the criminal insurgencies taking place in the country have spread and intensified. For most of the cartel's foot soldiers and their gang associates, brutal deaths prove almost certain. Such a form of imminent mortality facing adherents makes the worship of Santa Muerte spiritually dark. The death of someone's enemies, protection from harm, or at least hope for a quick and glorious death, cultivation of a dangerous reputation, and ability to enjoy the benefits of fabulous riches, including the company of beautiful women, become paramount. With the stakes so high, the sacrifices and offerings to Santa Muerte have become primeval and barbaric. Rather than plates of food, beer, and tobacco, in some instances, the heads of victims, and presumably their souls, have served as offerings to invoke powerful petitions for divine intervention. This should sound familiar to anyone who is versed in the occult practices of, yeah, like the people like the Aztec Empire, where they would cut the beating heart out of a sacrificial victim and offer it up to the god. The Santa Muerte is doing similar things, and no one would argue, at least with any credibility, that the Aztecs were models of religious purity and true belief with their ritual killings and sacrifices on a daily basis. The FBI website goes on to note, after recounting several Santa Muerte ritualistic killings, they state, quote, additional incidents allegedly have occurred involving victims with their skin and hearts removed. Other cases have included castrated and beheaded while alive, lit on fire and burned to death, and butchered and quartered. Sometimes authorities found only the victim's skin. How this is related to MS-13 is a sizable portion of MS-13 is involved in Santa Muerte worship, as well as outright and abject Satanism. And what we see here, and these are going, back decades, they're citing the FBI is citing things back from the 1980s. They go on to note several killings all over the United States, including murder of DEA agents. And MS-13, a lot of them in police reporting have shown to be active worshippers of Santa Muerte. A lot of others have been, admitted to being active Satan worshippers. Now, I don't think that there's a big difference because Satan worship, it's a bit more nuanced and everything. But it's no, I think that Santa Muerte and the devil are likely one and the same because the devil goes by many names. This sort of heinous sacrificial system being set up. Now, the FBI, in their conclusion on dealing with Santa Muerte, goes on to state, and this is literally under the headline conclusion, quote, the latest variant of the cult of Santa Muerte promotes extreme, corrupt, and criminal, even evil behaviors. Law enforcement agencies need to provide a balanced yet vigilant response. The rise of a fully criminalized and dark variant of Santa Muerte worship holds many negative implications. Of greatest concern, the inspired and ritualistic killings associated with the cult could emerge across the border and manifest domestically in the United States. Now, this FBI report is from 2013, and we start to see that a bit in the brutal killings that I listed before, committed by MS-13. And then the FBI concludes, the author would like to thank, Robert Almonte, U.S. Marshal, Western District of Texas, whose patron saints of Mexican drug underworld training provided additional research and law enforcement practitioner insight used in this article. So special thanks to Robert Almonte of the U.S. Marshal Service for the information there. Now, what we have next is, well, what does this have to do with the media? Why would the media be so bent on obscuring the lines and trying to distract and take your attention away from the reality of MS-13 and the necessity of calling out these behaviors, particularly the violent behaviors, as inhuman or animalistic. And to that, we will delve into a little bit of the practices that high-ranking leftists are participated in. And for that, we will first go to John Podesta. John Podesta is a senior advisor to two-time presidential hopeful and two-time presidential failure Hillary Rodham Clinton, herself known for making odd and at best ambiguous statements linking herself to occult practices. We have John Podesta and his brother being invited by a Marina Abramovic event during the 2016 campaign. Actually, I'm sorry, 2015, leading up to the 2016 election, where he was invited to what is known as spirit cooking. And you probably heard about this at the time, especially when WikiLeaks, released those emails, and this was in November of 2016, approximately, like right before the actual election. We do a bit of digging to find out what spirit cooking actually is. Now, we see a lot of Democrat covering for what spirit cooking actually is, like the nymag.com was calling it crazy conspiracy theorists to assert that there was any connection to Satanism in spirit cooking. But spirit cooking is a quote sacrament in the religion of Thelema. End quote. And for those who are unaware, Thelema is a Satanist religion founded by the man who dubbed himself the Beast 666, Aleister Crowley, who was a magician, well, not in the like stage magic clap 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 sense, but in the ritualistic and depraved sense, steeped in sex magic and occult rituals. He, in his Thelema religion, basically codified a system of rituals that were later used as the direct inspiration for Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, became popular in the 1960s. Now, spirit cooking involves the following. As described in the Thelema, it is to create a cake of light, as they call it. The sacrament is meant to symbolize, this is a quote, the union between the microcosm, man, and the macrocosm, the divine, which is a representation of one of the prime maxims in Hermeticism. Quote, as above, so below. Now, what is the cake of light made of? The ingredients of the cake of light include, quote, honey, oil, menstrual blood, and sperm. And they are consuming it. And this Abramovic lady, has put on these stage performances involving all sorts of blood rituals. And to be fair, in the public ones, it's said that she uses pig's blood, but there's no reason to believe that she would do that in a private setting unless just take it at face value. Just believe her claims, but I don't know why anyone would believe the claims of a liar. Now, on the Aleister Crowley connection, you can find, if you look online, President Obama himself wearing Aleister Crowley T-shirts, along with people like Jay-Z wearing hoodies that have his maxim, "Do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." which was found, I believe, in the Book of the Law by Aleister Crowley, but I'd have to pull them off the shelves to be sure on that. And you might think, well, maybe this is just a recent phenomenon. The Democrats, the far left, and their upper echelon haven't always been Satan worshippers, have they? And you can go back to 2012. The DNC voted overwhelmingly to remove any reference to God in their official platform. For the 2012 election, the second term of Barack Obama, and several of the other heinous actors of that administration. And when they dealt with a bunch of backlash for removing God from their platform, they reintroduced the measure on the floor, and when they passed it, even though the crowd, when you were listening to the audio, you could hear the crowd, shouting it down. I mean, to be fair, it did sound, it was like it was about a 50-50 split, and it required a two-thirds vote. The chair of the DNC at the time, went ahead and declared a two-thirds vote had taken place in the affirmative, at which point you hear virtually the entire stadium erupting in boos when they brought God back into their platform. And you've seen this sort of thing all the time with the left, and you think, well, maybe they are just being suckered, and it's like, yeah, probably most of them. Think about what the top Democrats like to do. They lie about everything. I have yet to hear a Democrat come out in a speech and while running for office or anything like that, one of these liberals, and tell you our platform is, we want more of your money, we want control over your children, and we want you to stand aside while we indoctrinate them and tell them it's okay to be trannies at age 6 or whatever they're pushing for now. And it's part of the socialist move. And for those who don't know, transgender hormones, especially when administered that young, sterilize you permanently. So where it stands is they want to control the home. They want to dissolve the family, dissolve the societal bonds of marriage. That's why you see all this push for, you saw that huge push leading up to the Obergefell decision, and now you see the push for everyone to start normalizing relationships with transsexuals. And you see this kind of stuff, and when you get a glimpse to what these high profile Democrats, not all the voters. I think the voters, a lot of them are just being misled, and a lot of them have good hearts because they think that the Democrats are actually out there to help. The politicians almost to a T have this kind of depravity. I mean, look at their quote lion of the Senate, Teddy Kennedy, murdered that poor woman in what was it, Chappaquiddick, goes on to be champion left and right. These kinds of people are their role models. So, Saul Alinsky. Everybody hears about Saul Alinsky and rules for radicals and everything, and that's important. What we're seeing now with their aggressive push is that Trump has thrown a bit of a monkey wrench into the system. They were accelerating. The left was accelerating their control agenda, and they pushed a bit too hard and a bit too early, and America said no. And that put them in a complete tailspin, and now they are showing their true colors. They're sticking up for people who participate in violent ritualistic killings, and comparing, just the other day, comparing Trump's presidency to MS-13, to bring it full circle here for you. They're now comparing Trump, who has done a massive amount of deregulation, and paint him as some sort of Hitlerian totalitarian, which is the opposite of the truth, and we're expected to go along with and believe it. But then, by equivocating his administration to MS-13, they're trying to accomplish two things. They're trying to delegitimize the claim that MS-13 are animals, and also, at the same time, otherize the Trump administration. They want you to think, oh, when he calls people animals, it's because it's because he's really an animal. We have to look at him, not at where he's pointing. The Democrats are very good at this, which is why I have way more beefs with the Democrats than I do with the Republicans. But you will see this at an accelerated pace every time their agenda gets set back. Like the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Masterpiece Cake Shop, who was being sued by the Colorado Civil Rights Commission on behalf of some homosexual couple who wanted to, get quote married. And you saw the Supreme Court decision come down just this morning, and you expect a backlash. Keep an eye out, and I'll be with you, recording as often as possible, writing as often as possible. And hopefully together we can get some truth out there and fight back. And in the meantime, if anyone hears this, then just when you see lies out there like that, don't be afraid to stand up and expose them. Though the lefties, they'll delete your comments, and it's to be expected. Post your own though. I finally got sick of seeing all these people, deliberately taking the MS-13 comment out of context. So I started providing the context, and every time I would comment, within minutes the liberal poster would delete my comment. I just posted on my own, and okay, and kept sending it out to as many people as I could in direct messages and text messages and talking with people. But go ahead, get the truth out there, because there's we've been lied to for so long, since long before the sexual revolution, but in an increasing amount ever since the sexual revolution. This is what we're going to try to deal with on this show is the extreme and pervasive nature of lies from the culture, Hollywood, from the government, especially in the liberal side, but you see it on the Republicans too. Like Trey Gowdy the other day was a complete disgrace. I'll do something on that. We will keep seeing it, and as long as we keep our hearts and our minds, prayerful. That's key. We need to be in contact with prayer every day, and asking the Lord to show us what's true and what's not, and to guide us. Because if we're not doing that, then we'll be led astray and might actually fall for some of this garbage. Keep at it out there, and any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.